Hello, hello, hello. It's Charmaine Hammond, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. Thank you for joining us. We are here on the Global Influence Building Master Classes, and we have an incredible show lined up for you, a really popular master class. There's been lots of communication and chatter going on Twitter and Facebook about this. The Global Influence Summit is coming up in February 18th and 19th, and that's part of why we started this series. We wanted you to get introduced to some of our amazing champions, sponsors, and speakers. And our guest today, Joel Boggess, is probably one of our biggest champions. And before I introduce him with his formal bio, I just want to give a couple of things that he doesn't even know I'm going to say this. And actually the tables are turned because Joel has interviewed me, gosh, I don't know, several times now. And he's interviewed so many people from the Evolutionary Business Council. Joel has been such a tremendous support. But here's some of the fun things that I want you to know. Joel is a dog lover. So when I connected with Joel about being on his show, I think we talked forever about dogs and then had a fantastic show. And one of the things I love about Joel is the show that he offers, the relaunch show. He brings on guests of all different parts of the world and all different topics. So it's so diverse. Now let me share with you, and he's so much, I just got to say he's so much fun to work with. That's the real blessing. He makes it really easy to be in the interviewee's seat. And so now today I got a lot of pressure because I'm going to be interviewing him. All right, let me introduce him formally. He's the guy who people call when they need a tested and proven plan to hit #1 with their book or show. As a radio veteran and best-selling author, Joel knows the strategies and tactics that will help you get your message seen, heard, and recognized. His podcast relaunch has been named Podcaster's Paradise Most Inspirational, and that was by Podcaster's Paradise, 2 years in a row, 2014 and 2015. And he was mentioned in Huffington Post, wow, as being one of the top 5 shows to tune in for inspiration. And I can see why. I've listened to tons of Joel's shows as well. And he was mentioned in Inc., one of my favorite mags, as one of the top 20 business podcasts for 2015. Some great credentials. He's a podcast news and tech contributor for HuffPost and Success.com. He's also an author and a speaker. His latest book, Finding Your Voice, hit the #1 spot on Amazon, #1 spot on Amazon for happiness and success, and also in the self-esteem categories. He's originally from San Antonio, Texas, has an undergraduate degree from Texas Tech University and an MBA from Amberton University and a master's in counseling. I don't know how he fits this all in. He and his wife live in Dallas-Fort Worth area with 2 absolutely beautifully amazing golden retrievers, a retired therapy dog, Bubba and Jake. So, wow, Joel, welcome to the master class.
Hey, Charmaine, this is going to be so much fun. I've been looking forward to this all week, and wow, here we are talking again, and always enjoy that time that you and I get to spend.
Well, I love it because here I am with my little headset, and you're in the whole studio, so you've just got it going on there.
Well, yeah, we're having a lot of fun.
Well, listen, I'm going to let people know if you've got questions or comments for Joel. I know some of you had questions. You were talking to me about them on Facebook. Put them in the chat box. I'll be monitoring them. I love some of you to come on and let us know where you're from, where you're listening from today. I'm in sunny California today, and Julie, our event coordinator, marketing director, is in rainy Vancouver, Canada. Joel, what's the weather like where you are?
In Texas, it's a little bit chilly. It has been, for a while, but it warms up rather nicely throughout the day. So
awesome.
I still have a sweatshirt on.
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny because in California, we're from Canada, so where we have tons of snow in the winter, and it's quite funny because I've been talking to people in San Diego area here, and they're saying, oh, it's so cold, and here we are walking around with our T-shirts. So I guess it's all about what you're used to. We've got Michelle saying Vancouver, and it's not rainy. Wow, awesome. And we've got Pat from Cambridge, England. Wow, awesome. So keep the comments coming. I'll keep looking at them. Joel, one of the things that we wanted to cover today is some of the mistakes that people make with podcasting. We wanted to talk about how to create a successful podcast, how to host your own show. One of the things I love about what you're doing is that you help people get their message out to the masses. And as speakers and authors, that's so critical. We've got Anique from Montreal, sunny and cold. Claudia from Redondo Beach in California. Welcome, welcome. So let me just give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then let's dive in deep with this content.
Sure. Again, Charmaine, thanks so much for inviting me to today's conversation, and I've been excited about this. I've spent a big chunk of the 90s behind the mic in traditional radio and also in front of the camera doing television. So the broadcasting roots run really, really deep. And when podcasting started to not quite peek over the horizon, 8, 9, 10 years ago, it got my attention. And I knew that I needed to not only be in the podcasting industry, but I needed to be a leader in the podcasting industry. And gosh, we've been having so much fun with relaunch. Thank you for your kind words about it earlier. We have also snuck past 1 million total listens. I think it was 1 million and something change last time I looked, and that is crazy. But
that's crazy awesome.
it really is. But what it really says to me is that this is the year of the podcast and the podcaster, and there's unlimited business possibilities and opportunities if you handle your show well, if you handle the creation, launch, and promotion of your show well. And that's what's happened for Pay and I. And we've actually been able to uncover, about 3 hidden monetization opportunities, ways to make money from the show, which are outside the traditional. And what a lot of podcasters are kind of, scraping and kind of pushing each other around, trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I get my next sponsor? How do I get my next sponsor? And while that is one monetization possibility, that's on the low end.
Yeah. Okay.
And what Pay and I figured out rather is the higher end ways to do it.
Awesome. Well, I hope you'll share a little sneak preview of that with us. That sounds interesting. Here's a question to start us off. I had someone email me and say, I can't be on it live today, but can you please explain what is a podcast? I know what a radio show is. What's a podcast?
Okay. That's a great question. Well, a podcast is basically an on-demand audio show that's available on your iPhone, on your smartphone, on your tablet, on your computer, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And this is why podcasting is so exciting these days, is because everyone that has an iPhone or a tablet, they now have natively installed the podcast app on their device. And this is huge because if you think about your local iPhone store, I don't know how it is in California where you live, but where I live, it is packed. And a lot of people are walking out of there with brand new phones. And the people that do have immediate access to my content. So that means when they're at home, scrolling, sitting on the couch, scrolling through their apps, the podcast app is right there. And if my podcast is sitting pretty at the time, well, there's a good possibility that they could be listeners, later clients and customers, because that device can turn into an ATM machine with the right call to action.
Wow. Awesome. So that's what a podcast is. You have worked with a lot of podcasters. I know you actually have programs that teach people how to do podcasting and how to do radio shows. Joel, what are some of the common mistakes? Because I've had my own radio show too, and there are so many mistakes I made that I would do differently. Again, what are some of the common mistakes you see people making with podcasts or hosting their own shows?
Sure. I think that sometimes people get this idea of, I'm going to launch a podcast and that's going to make me a lot of money. Truckloads full of money. Trucks are just going to start backing up to the front door. And, both you and I know that that's a nice fantasy, but that's hardly reality. And what I really try to help people understand is the podcast in and of itself is not a business model, but it can be used very, very well inside of a business model. And every business really needs a podcast. these days because of what I mentioned earlier. It's your way of communicating with the world. But just understand that the podcast in and of itself is, while it can generate money on its own, it's not going to be the main generator. It's just going to help you pick up traction and speed in the business.
Awesome. You know, we've got a lot of folks that are actually speaking at the Global Influence Summit that you've had on your show, like Teresa de Grosbois, Debbie Dashenier, Sean Duperrin, amazing speakers, and they get on radio shows all the time and on podcasts all the time to help share their message. And one of the things that I've noticed, Joel, when you're doing your podcast is the promotional strategies that you use are really far-reaching and they're really influence-based. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing Teresa on the show right around, it was a couple of years ago, right around the time that I was on the show, and I was most impressed with the way that you marketed the show and gathered listeners, because I think that's one of the biggest challenges. How do we get people to listen? We can have an awesome show, an awesome podcast. How do we actually get people there? What are you finding is working? Right.
If nobody knows about your show, then it'll sit on the shelf. So yeah, marketing is key, and we live in a content-heavy world today. And the way you know this is just scroll through your phone and your Twitter feed, your Facebook feed, and it seems like there is just an overwhelming amount of information. However, with the right strategy, you can take your show and rise above the noise so that you're seen, heard, and recognized. And it's not that hard to do it, but you have to be clear on a couple of things. You have to be clear of who you're trying to reach, and no, it's not everyone. And you also have to be clear of the message that you're trying to send. Here's what I mean by message: the problem that you're trying to solve. Gotcha. The mistake that a lot of podcasters make is that they have this fantasy that people are up at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning searching for podcasts to listen to. And that is a nice fantasy. However, that's not reality. What reality is that person that's tossing and turning and kicking their covers, all over the place, they're searching for a solution to something. Whatever it is that's keeping them up at night. It might be a spiritual challenge that they're dealing with. It could be a physical challenge that they're dealing with. It could be a financial challenge that they're dealing with, but something is keeping that person up at night, and they're not going to search through podcasts just because they have all this free time. No, they're looking for solutions. How do I get out of debt? How do I lower my blood pressure? How do I develop a closer connection to God or to spirit or to my significant other? They're looking for solutions to the problems. And if you, as a content creator, podcaster, know the solution that you provide, then you're gold. Yeah. And if you can communicate that through marketing on Twitter, Facebook, and the other places, people are going to come to you because they're searching for you. But they're not looking for just another way to spend 30 minutes.
Really well said. I think one of the things that's really resonated for me, you talked about being clear on who your audience is. You can't market to everybody, and I think that's one of the mistakes we often make in our marketing strategies. When we had Jerry Foster on our masterclass a few weeks ago, and he's a branding expert, and he was talking about, from a branding perspective, how you have to be so clear on what your message is and who's going to receive it, so that your brand can be clear. And one of the things, and he'll be speaking at the Global Influence Summit on branding. And what I love about what you've created, Joel, for your podcast is that people have gotten to know you. There's a relationship with your listeners. There's a relationship with people that know who you are. And there's a consistent brand and energy that goes out about your show. And I believe that that's one of the reasons why your show has just grown in immense popularity over, since you started. It just took right off. What are some of the other mistakes that you're seeing podcasters make that we need to know about?
A very common mistake is that people, podcasters, sometimes have this mistaken understanding, and they think that their guest is actually going to drive and carry their show for them, and that's not the case at all. You, as the podcaster, are responsible for your show's success. And that's why you have to have a good marketing strategy and an execution plan to make sure that that happens. And while, yeah, big name guests might cause a spike in your daily download, it's not going to carry it in the long term. And that's what you want.
Yeah.
You don't want just someone to listen to one particular show. You want to create a relationship with that listener.
Yes.
So relying on the guest to drive your show, that's a mistake that I've made, frankly. Yeah. With the other attempts at shows that I've done in the past. But eventually I learned that, the guy in the mirror is who's responsible for the show's growth and development. And once I understood that, then it was a game changer.
Yeah. Wow. And how I think what I'm getting from you is that we have to build a community around our show. I mean, certainly it's great if people listen once, but what you're building is really a following to follow
Yes.
your show and to be anticipating when's Joel's next podcast coming out, so that they automatically, it's one of their go-to places. Now, what are you finding? And Catherine says a comment here, wow. So, liking what you're saying. People are liking this, Joel. So, and all of you that are on, put your questions in the chat box. I'm keeping my eye on that. I've got another question that came in through email from someone that couldn't be here today. And they said, are you using social media as your primary marketing strategy for your podcast, or are there other things you're doing that are really working as well?
Sure, that is a great question. And if you'd like me to reply to her personally, I can do that as well. But
okay.
Absolutely, social media is king these days. So how do you use it? Well, when I used to do a live radio show, I would have people to call in and ask questions and things of that nature. And one of the questions that I would get frequently is, Joel, how do I do this? There are so many platforms available today. And we know the big names, right? Pinterest, and there's Instagram, and there's Snapchat, and then, there's just so many. And the question would be, what do I do? How do I do this? And then I would say, well, pick one and become rock star good at interacting with people on that one platform. And that's a solution right there. So how do you pick one? Very simple. Figure out where your audience hangs out and start there. For instance, if you're doing a podcast for Fortune 500 CEOs, well, there's probably more of them that check their LinkedIn status and profile than that check Pinterest.
Exactly.
Now, their daughters might be on Pinterest, but the CEO, male or female, man or woman, is probably checking their LinkedIn a little bit more than they're checking, Pinterest or other like Facebook and things of that nature. Doesn't mean that they're not.
Yeah.
But if you want to go where they hang out. Now, one of my clients is Lee is her first name. She's such a delightful lady. I think I wouldn't be surprised if she was on this webinar. and Lee is an author, and she's a lady in her 50s, and her audience hangs out on Pinterest. That's where her audience hangs out, and that's where she spends a lot of time connecting with people. She doesn't spend that amount of time on LinkedIn for the same reason of the CEO that we've talked about just a little while ago. But that has been a game changer for Lee because her list is growing exponentially because she's doing it the smart way. She's just communicating primarily where her peeps are.
Beautiful. So we got to be smart podcasters. Some comments coming in for you. We had Claudia that was commenting earlier about knowing your audience and creating the community. And she says that's so true. Together we can rock and make a difference in our community and in our world. And then we have Catherine who was commenting on about when you were talking about go where your audience goes, and it's well said. Catherine has a question for you. Joel, what would you suggest is the best way to prepare for a new podcast guest? Excellent question, Catherine.
That is a great question. I actually wrote a blog piece on this earlier this week. Relaunchshow.com is where I park all of my my content. But the best way to prepare is to read their book if you can and if you have it available. Watch a YouTube video or two if you can and if you have it available. But when I wrote the blog article, here's what I said. A lot of times guests will give me a very extensive bio, an intro of, this is who I am, these are the books that I've written, these are the television shows I've been on, things of that nature. And the mistake that a lot of podcasters make is they think, okay, I've got to read all of this stuff at the beginning of my show, and that actually makes for a not that good of an intro. And you've probably heard podcasts where the host, just not knowing any better, takes the 3 paragraphs that the person would have provided for them and just reads the whole thing, and it definitely sounds like they're reading too. Sometimes it sounds like they're reading for the first time. But what my recommendation is take 2 or 3 sentences from all of that intro and then quickly get into the content. Best-selling author Charmaine Hammond is my guest today. On Toby's Terms, excellent book. She's got a couple of other books. We're going to talk about it. Charmaine, hey, what's up? And then we go right into the show. Now, of course, you have a lot more things on your resume than just what I briefly mentioned. However, I'm going to use that information in the interview, and I'm going to ask you questions so I can draw that out of you, so you can talk about what you're doing and what you have done and what you found success with. So the best way to prepare, take that person's information, the information that they give you, and use it as form questions out of it so that you can use it as good fodder for the interview. And also, if you have an opportunity, watch a couple of videos so you can get an understanding. Read their book if you have that opportunity or availability. I personally don't. When I started the Relaunch Show, we would get books after book after book in the mail, and I was thankful for that, and I would read them. And On Toby's Terms was one of them early on as I started the podcast, but as the show grew and as our business grew as a result, I simply didn't have that time anymore. So I had to quickly think on my feet and come to the answer to this question that was just asked me. How do I prepare for them? And it's just I read their own content, quickly introduce them, and ask better questions to draw the information out. The mistake there is that I've heard a lot of podcasters, and you've probably heard them too, just because they don't know any better, give away everything that the person has done in the intro. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, where do you go?
Yeah.
And that creates a lot of stress and work for both of you.
Yes. So I love this conversation of preparation because it's critical not only for the show, but to create that energy, I've certainly had guests when I had my Your Book as a Business radio show a couple of years ago, and some people were really experienced and comfortable being on that kind of a platform, and other people were really nervous, and it was really obvious. And I know one of the things that you do exceptionally well, Joel, is that you create the space for a comfortable conversation, and that for me is so important. I'm a guest a lot on media and podcasts and video blogs, and that whole creating that comfortable environment for everyone is critical. So we've got some great questions and comments coming in. Thanks, here we are, where's that? I love what Joel said about me being the star of the show. I know this, yet it hasn't really sunk in, so I've been spending a lot of my time trying to determine my star guests. Love that. Should be that person. I love it. And then Catherine says, yes, it does. Thank you. So great question, great answer. What else, Joel, do you think is critical for us to know about podcasting before we talk a little bit about how we can monetize that?
Sure. Podcasting is something that people can enjoy without stopping what they're currently doing. So, for instance, if you're working out, you can listen to your podcast. If you're walking your dog, you can listen to your podcast. If you're commuting to work, if you're picking up kids, if you're sitting in the carpool lane, you can listen to your podcast. This is what makes it so enjoyable. Enjoyable is not the word, but this is what makes it so relevant in today's information-packed, environment that we live. Now, videos like YouTube's and things of that nature, those definitely have their place in the business building world. However, you have to stop what you're doing to watch a video.
Right.
You can't be driving, hopefully, and watching a video. But with a podcast, you can listen while you're doing other things, and that's what makes it so versatile. That's the word I'm looking for, versatile.
There's the word.
And people can enjoy it at all times, anytime. And that's one of the reasons that I believe every business needs a podcast. I've got a killer talk where I actually talk about the top 4 reasons that every business needs a podcast. And one of them is that because your customers, clients, and prospects can have access to your content 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, not just the free content, but then if you put in the purchase link in the show notes or the blog article that accompanies your podcast episode, well, guess what? At 2:30 in the morning, they can hit that purchase link, and you can wake up in the morning with money in your bank account.
Woohoo! Those are
that.
great wordings. We gotta love that. Yeah, it's the strategy you're talking about, passive income. One of the questions that came up, and I just wanted to comment on the chat box. Thank you, Joel, for putting up your link to the 7 Mistakes gift that you're offering people. So if you're on the chat box and haven't seen that, Joel's got a link there. You want to definitely go over and grab that. Great information. Now, I had another question that came in through email that said, is there any better length for a podcast in terms of the time of that podcast, and is there a better frequency? Should it be once a week, once a month? What do you have a sense on what that would look like for people?
Yeah, I sure do. And really, Charmaine, it all depends on who you're trying to broadcast to. Who's your avatar? Who's your ideal listener? And really, that's the way you make all of your business decisions and your podcast decisions. This is great news, because this means you don't have to rack your brain thinking, gosh, what should I do? Should I broadcast 7 days a week, or should I broadcast 3 days a week? Should I broadcast for an hour? Should I broadcast for 10 minutes at a time? You don't have to bang your head against the wall trying to think about that, because all you need to do is think about, okay, who's my listener? What would he do? Or what would she do? And
Brilliant.
yeah, right.
Brilliant.
Because that's what matters. The listener matters. What you think and do matters too, as a content creator. But if you're trying to connect with a listener, trying to get them on your list, or intrigue them to come to your event or something, then it only matters what they think, say, and do.
Beautifully said. Wow, that is juicy. You were talking about, when you were talking about you have to really know your audience to then, like I'm hearing, you need to know your audience to make pretty much every decision based on your marketing, your branding, your frequency, your length of podcast. All of that depends on who is the listener. And we had Christy Tom on the masterclass a couple of days ago, and she was talking about marketing and sponsorship, and she was giving an example of, like, you think of it like a bullseye, that in the middle, there's your core, and then everything else comes from that. And I'm hearing you really say how important that is, Joel, to have that one critical question answered, because everything else depends on it.
It really does. If you know who your listener is, your ideal listener, you're also going to probably know what their pain points are.
Yeah.
And if you know where it hurts, then you're going to be able to speak to that. You're going to be able to add value to that, provide some solutions, paid and unpaid, for that.
Gotcha.
But if you don't know who your listener is, then you're not going to know what they're experiencing. Are they looking for a way to heal from a divorce? Well, you don't know unless you're clear that you're speaking to 45-year-old divorced women, for instance, or 45-year-old divorced men, for that matter.
Yeah.
If you know who your listener is specifically, then you're going to be able to understand what they're experiencing. If your listener is an 18-year-old young man, you're obviously going to talk differently than if it's a 45-year-old man.
Yeah.
Because they're experiencing different things. Their pain is different. For the young guy, it might be, finding a significant other, or looking for their first job, or understanding what college to go to, or what career to pursue. For the older guy, it might be, okay, what do I do with this second half that I'm now in?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow, I can't wait to listen to this replay, because I don't want to be sitting here writing. My head will be down the whole time, but this is juicy content. Now, for those of you that are on the chat box, what I would love to hear from you so we can share it with Joel is, who is your audience? Let's figure this out, folks. Who is your audience? And maybe what are some of their pain points that Joel talked about? So if you can put that in the chat box, and then I'll read those out to you, Joel, as we go forward. Now, one of the other pieces, the other questions I had is, with a podcast, it was sort of a process question. So somebody said you do the podcast, and how often do you do a relaunch, Joel? Just
I do that. Sure. I started with a 5-day a week, moved to 6, and currently we're doing a 3-day a week.
Wow. So 6 a week. That must have been a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, you have to really have a love for wanting to share your voice in this particular medium. And one of the things that I am very transparent with to folks when I'm on stage, or being interviewed on somebody's show, is that my job is not to talk you into doing a podcast.
Right.
That's not my job. And frankly, I don't want that job. However, if you already know that I'm going to give this a try, I'm going to definitely put my feet into the podcasting waters, and I'm going to give this a try, well, then absolutely I can come along with you and show you some of the strategies, some of the tools, some of the techniques that'll help you hit number 1 on iTunes relatively quickly, and then learn how to leverage that into bigger opportunities. However, if that's not what your passion is, then let's figure something else out. Let's figure out what else you can do, what other medium you can use that'll help you grow your business. Because doing a podcast is not easy. It's very, very rewarding and can be highly lucrative. However, it's not for everyone. So I've chose a long time ago to not make it my responsibility to talk people into podcasting, because that's something they have to decide for themselves. That's between them and the man upstairs, and I'm not involved in that conversation.
So here's another question that came in from email. Someone was emailing me saying, I can't be there, but here's my big juicy question. This might be a really big question. So this is a person who doesn't have a podcast. If they were to go away and figure out one thing, the question was related to technology. What would you need to get started? So I mean, you've got an incredible setup. You've got a professionally designed booth. I've been watching pictures of the installation and the creation of that. I mean, it looks amazing. What would somebody who's just starting out need to do a podcast that sounds of high quality?
Sure, that's a great question. You're probably not expecting this answer, but the first thing that I would really recommend is that whoever asked that question gets clear on, number 1, why they would want to do a podcast in the first place, what message they'd want to send or talk about, and who they would want to minister or speak to. Okay. Now, no equipment is needed, no expenses are necessary to answer those questions, but they're actually the most important questions, because you can have a $200 setup, or you can have a $20,000 setup, but if you don't have the answers to those key questions, it's going to be in vain. Now, Debbie has a great post here, she talks about her avatar, and she is pretty detailed. Debbie says her avatar is 38. She's a mom of 2. She's got young kids. She lives in the burbs, and she drives a minivan. She volunteers, and she works full time, and she's also married. So this is perfect. This is a great example here. Now, having said that, it probably took Debbie more than 10 minutes and 1 cup of tea to come to that clarity. I wasn't there, but I suspect that it probably took her a little bit to come up with that.
Yeah.
There was probably a process involved. But you know what? She allowed herself to go through that process. And now she has the clarity so that if she has a podcast, she knows exactly who she's talking to. Or if she writes blogs, she'll know exactly who's reading them.
Beautiful. So that's the kind of clarity we have to get to. We actually have to be able to pretty much describe that avatar, describe that audience in such detail. It's not just women. It might be women in a certain age group. One of my friends, I don't know if you've had my friend Diana Bowes on the show, but Diana Bowes.
Love Diana.
Oh, isn't she awesome? Oh my gosh, fabulous at 50. She has these amazing events. She's a member of the Evolutionary Business Council, and I love what she's doing in the world for women over 50. She did let me in her group, Joel, when I was I was about 47, so I got early entry into the Fabulous at 50 group. But she's an example of someone who's really clear on her brand and who her audience is. And I watch how she markets. She has an online magazine, a print magazine. She speaks. She goes on shows like yours, and is that an example of how detailed we want to get to? That specific?
Absolutely. The more detailed you are, the easier it's going to be for your avatar.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay,
but if you have zero details, then it's going to be highly confusing for your avatar to know, is this the right show for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
They're going to continue to scroll unless you communicate quickly. Catherine asked a story asked a question about her weekly blab. Can I talk
for
on
it. Dive in.
I would love for her to explore ways to take her blab and make it a podcast. And here's why. Because people can listen to a podcast. We've talked about this earlier on their own time. That's what makes podcasting so incredibly attractive to people. Is if you're on the third shift, let's say you're working at 2:30 in the morning, well, boom, you can tune into a podcast. You don't have to fit it into your schedule. It fits into your schedule.
Gotcha.
If you're taking the early morning train to work, boom, your show's right there in your inbox, in your subscription. I love Catherine's idea about doing a podcast and a blab because, Catherine, I don't know if you knew this, but Blab's technology actually they'll convert it into an MP3 audio for you.
Wow.
And I'm not a Blab expert, but I do know that that's available because we've had this conversation before. And if you can, or what you can do then is take that MP3 file, put it into your podcast. It's already content that's created, and then spread it out over iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, now into the podcasting game, and many, many other directories. But one of the things that I like to talk about is repurposing content. And once something is created, like in a blab, you then repurpose it and make it available on other platforms. Podcasting is a great way to do it.
Wow. So you're talking about repurposing that content. That's a juicy tip about Blab. I did not know that. And I want to share a funny story with you, Joel. I was on a Blab yesterday with the Women's Speaker Association, and we were having a great conversation. Lots of people in the room. I was presenting on sponsorship, and halfway through, we broke Blab. It just sort of froze up. It kept recording. So we had my husband was kind of funny after. He said, "See, Charmaine, I told you talk too much. You just break the internet." But that's really exciting to know about, Blab, because I was thinking, wow, wouldn't it be cool if I could have a way for people to listen to this later and share that out? So awesome, awesome. And we've got Michelle who says, I agree, I'm on Blab too. Podcast is easy to consume. Yeah. Catherine says audio and video. It's wonderful. They're loving that. So one of the other questions I had, and this is coming from my perspective with the whole podcasting, it sounds like with podcasting, you got to have a plan. What I've really taken away, there's 3 questions that you've mentioned that have to be answered, and they're critical, and it's really came out loud and clear for me: the who, the why, and the what, and all your decisions are based on that. Now, you talked a little bit about monetization, and I know you're stellar at this, Joel. You've been at this for a long time as a speaker, as an author, as a podcaster. What are some of the other ways that people could get excited about monetizing their podcast?
Okay, the very first thing that I would recommend that any podcaster do is that they learn how to hit number 1 on iTunes in all of their categories and learn how to hit it multiple times. So let me tell you a quick story. That was my goal with Relaunch when I started. I didn't know how to do it, but I was determined to figure out the art and the science behind doing it, and that's exactly what we did, and we now coach people to do exactly that. And the reason that I wanted to hit number 1 over and over and over again is because I knew, Charmaine, that it was going to be a barn door opener for me and my business if I was able to pull that off. And I hit my first number 1 on iTunes about 12 days after my initial launch. And the day after I hit my first number 1, the phone rang, and it was one of the organizers at Podcast Movement giving me my very first speaking opportunity on a national stage because of my show. Now fast forward. Then the following year, the organizer from Podcast Movement called me up and said, "Hey, Joel, I need you to come and do this for me." And that turned into a paid gig for me. Now, Podcast Movement Part 3, the 2016, is getting ready to happen in Chicago, and for the 3rd year in a row, I'll be a speaker at PM16.
Yay!
And that, so, see, but none of that would have happened had I not had a successful show. And there have been other speaking opportunities that have come as a result of having the show. So that's one way. It positions you in a whole other category as a speaker if you're able to have a good show, a successful show that you have to your credit. Another way to monetize is if you handle the creation, launch, and promotion of your show correctly and really knock it out of the park, which is what we did, well, then all of a sudden you're attractive to top-tier clients. Yeah. And I mean, Heil Microphone. I'm speaking into a Heil Microphone right now. They're actually a client. We're their podcast launch coaches. And what is surprising, Heil has been in the sound business for 50 years. It all started with Bob Heil, working with, acts like the Grateful Dead and the Who and all that. But they actually didn't know how to podcast. So of all the podcasters in the world, they hired me. Smart move for them. Because,
I'd say.
because nobody knows podcast launches better than me. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity had I not proven that I had the chops by knocking it out of the park with my own show. So having those clients that are not beginners, but that are corporates with corporate budgets, that's a way to monetize right there. But you got to handle your show well, and you got to show that you've been successful on your own, which is actually pretty easy if you have a plan and a strategy for it.
Awesome. And that just leads into a great question from Debbie. Can you give us a few tips on how to hit number 1 besides just having a great show? What else do we need to do?
Oh yeah, now this is a tip that I probably need to write a book on.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe we can co-author that book together. What do you think?
Yeah, then I'll
Just
have you on
saying.
my podcast.
Just saying.
Do it.
Okay. So here's what you got to do, Debbie. Is you got to be third grade simple in how you want your listeners and your supporters to help you. Okay. Now, what in the heck does that mean? Well, let me break it down. There's three main ingredients to hitting number one on iTunes. You've got to have subscribers. You've got to have a growing subscriber base. You have to have reviews on your show. People have to go to the iTunes channel and review your show. That's 1 star through 5 star, and then they have to leave a rating. That's where you actually write in a rating. Okay, now those three things sound simple, and they are. However, about 80 or more % of the population don't know what a podcast is yet, and a fraction of those people know how to navigate their way through iTunes. Okay, so that's a challenge, and for people that are not tech savvy, which is almost everybody, that's going to be frightening. Yeah. So the way around that, Debbie, is you just got to be third grade simple, and you got to show people through tutorials, through screenshots, through maybe a couple of phone calls, a little bit of hand-holding, exactly how people can help you. Because most people want to help you. The people that love you, the people that know you, that trust you, that want you to be successful, they want to help you. They're just not going to, they just need to know exactly how. And so when you put together your launch plan and strategy, part of that plan are the tools that are going to help them. And people will do it. Now here's the opportunity. Most podcasters won't do that. What a lot of people say is, no, I have a big list. I'll just blast my list, ask them to help me, and that's all it takes. Well, in theory that works, but in reality it doesn't work because of what I said earlier. Podcasting is a new medium for most people, and if it's new, it's people are going to kind of forget about that email. However, if you are intentional and you reach out to people with specific instructions, people, not a list, but people, designated people, if you reach out to them, then they're likely to take action, especially if you're easy with, okay, this is what I need you to do, this is when I need you to do it, and we'll go from there. And that's what I did. Most people won't do it, so there's no competition, but the people that do, like Michael Port, I've helped him crush his podcast launch, the Steal the Show. We're getting ready to launch Bob Burg's podcast, the Go Giver podcast, and that's exactly what we're doing to hit number one.
Awesome. Well, and like you said, it's a real strategy. It's like, I mean, we both have done book launches before. In fact, your podcast and show is part of my book launch. I believe it's been part of half of the EBC's book launches. So it really is what you said. It's a process. It's a strategy. We've got to take time to do it. You brought up an important point there, Joel, is that it's also about that shared influence. People want to help us. If we don't ask, they just don't know how. And you and I both love Teresa de Grosbois. She talks about how to build mass influence. And the number one thing she says is it's all about that authentic relationship that you take time to build, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's through social media as your listening audience. But it's so critical, that relationship, because that's the group of people that are just going to keep coming back to listen to you. And it's not just the listening, is it? It's also, we want them to share our content with the rest of the world as well.
And that's another thing that we have to be third grade simple with. We've got to help people know how that they can share us. People's general answer is, of course I'll help you. I'll do whatever I can. But if you leave the conversation there, that gives them no actionable items, nothing to work on. But you got to help people with that. Debbie said an interesting comment here. It's actually spot on. She says, so I better spend some time playing in iTunes so she can create a tutorial for others how to do it. Yeah, she definitely wants to do that, but she wants to become very familiar with her own show in iTunes, because that's going to be the conversations that she has with people on how to do that. Now, she can create her own tutorial, absolutely, or she can use tutorials that have already been created, which for some people, depending on their own level of technology and bandwidth, that might be something that you want to do. Also use another person's tutorials. That's what we did in our program. We created all of the solutions, make it turnkey, so it would be easy for people. But yeah, some folks create their own tutorial using their own podcast and artwork, which is absolutely just fine. So she's right on track there. Could have spent some time in iTunes to get your own figured out.
You know, one of the things that just popped up to me, and this is kind of back to marketing now, is when you did the first show with me, that was when my On Toby's Terms book came out, so going back a few years. And one of the things that I found really helpful, Joel, is after your podcast, after your shows, you actually send the guests the link and say, here's where it is, you know, you can find it here, please share it. Like, you actually provide us with really clear directions, which is amazing and helpful. And then the second thing that I found really helpful about the link that you shared is I actually sent that when I was pitching myself on other media. I would actually send your link, Joel, and say you can listen to me on Relaunch. I sent it out to sponsors. So I mean, the show I did with you, and I've used that strategy with every other show I've been on. I would use that as a way to give people an experience. Here's a little bit about Charmaine and what she's about, and they could access that information. It also promotes your show and podcast. And you know, we promote shows that we've been on long after the fact. I'm still promoting shows from a year ago because we go into Hootsuite and pre-schedule a whole bunch of tweets way in advance. So, you know, I think it's also really important as a guest to be able to really love up the hosts that are taking the time to put us on their podcast and show, because we've learned from you today there's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes to make an exquisite show and podcast like yours.
You bet. You want to, yeah, we do that as well. Anytime I'm on a show, and I'm on a lot of shows these days, but I'll personally get into my automation tool, and then I'll create a bit.ly link, and I'll create a tweet, and then I'll have that run in my rotation. So I mean, it's just a way to love up on the host, you know, to let them know, hey, we're still promoting this show over here. It was a lot of fun having us on. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think when sometimes people are on podcasts, you know, to promote it once and then that's it. I think you can get more mileage out of it if you just continue to promote it. Here's the thing about social media and a promotion, because the concern is, well, is that too much? I don't think it is. Here's why. Social media is like a revolving door in a busy mall.
Okay.
There are constantly new people coming in, and I personally tweet about 80 to 100 times a day. If you do the math, that's about every 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And that has been phenomenal for our growth. Now that usually shocks a lot of people when I do that, or when I say that, but the proof is in the numbers. And it really helps us increase our reach and visibility. So when I have, you know, past shows that I've been on, things of that nature, we just add it to the mix to continuously get content out there. And you know, when people are at a stoplight or, you know, waiting for their next appointment and they're scrolling through their content, well, you need to be visible.
Yeah.
And frequency is the key to visibility.
Yes. Critical. Now, we had a couple people join us. I'm not sure if you've seen the link. You might want to scroll way down in the chat box because Joel has put a gift there, the 7 mistakes, so I just want to make sure everyone sees that. I've got one juicy question I'm going to ask you before we wrap up. If you can just answer a soundbite for this, Joel. How do you see podcasting heading in the next 1 to 3 years? What's the future look like?
Boy, that is a great
Isn't
question.
that awesome?
Yeah, it really is. It's going nowhere but up. And one of the reasons I know this is because all of the traditional media folks are coming in droves to the podcasting world. Retired athletes, elite news personalities, actors, directors, comedians. Everyone's coming to this little corner of the world called podcasting. I mean, even President Obama, like him or not, is showing up in garages doing podcasts with folks because he understands that, oh my gosh, this is the new medium. People aren't sitting in front of their television on the couch like they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. They're active, they're mobile, they're doing stuff, they're moving around, and you know what, they've got earbuds and they're listening to their favorite music, they're listening to their favorite show, they're listening to whatever turns them on. The exciting thing is they could be listening to you. And the next time you see people in your Starbucks or at your local gym, working out, they could be tuning into your show. I ask people oftentimes when I see them, working out, what do you listen to when you work out? And people will share with you. And what that does is that opens up the door for me to talk about my show. And Charmaine, sometimes I'll even show them where my show is on their phone and help them subscribe to my show.
Awesome. You always come from a place of giving, my friend. I love that. Well, before we wrap up, I want to actually thank Joel on another reason, not just for helping us with our masterclass series. Joel is also one of our marketing partners for the Global Influence Summit that's coming up in February 18th and 19th, 2 weeks away, actually 2 weeks less a day now. We're so excited about this. And Joel has met and interviewed, I would say, a good part of the many speakers that we have at this event, and the event is really designed to help you take your business to the next level. We are going to be having a price hike going up, so I would really suggest you get registered now. It's $220 for 2 days of solid, high quality, high results focused speakers on topics of internet marketing and media and sponsorship and branding and getting your message to the world through social media. We're also having speakers actually teach you how to be a speaker and how to create your speaking business. We have people like Harrison Klein and Sean Duperrin, Teresa de Grosbois, Thomas Lemaguire, Jerry Foster, and that's just a few of the incredible speakers that we have coming to help you transform your business. There's a ton of amazing gifts that you get from one-year mentoring programs on your book as a business to a number of different ebooks. I would love to see you there. The speakers would love to see you there, and you can see that on your screen. You just have to press here, register me now. It's $220. I also want to mention that this is going to be an opportunity for you to network with people and to build influence. And you heard firsthand today from Joel how essential building influence and relationships is for your podcasting success, for your radio show success. So this is a place that you can do that and be able to meet them and hang out with them. And Joel, I want to just give you some big love right now for being such an incredible champion and partner for us. Everything I've done since I met you, you are behind 100%. And that just touches me deeply. So thank you. And I also appreciate how much of your show you've been able to give to the Evolutionary Business Council members, helping them with their book launches, their speaking tours. And you're just a prime example of all of the accolades that you've received and the awards you've received. And the number one, I know where that comes from. You're a great person, and your show simply rocks.
Well, we have a blast doing it, and gosh, at the end of this past year, just a couple of months ago, to be mentioned in mainstream media publications like the Huffington Post and Inc. magazine as being one of the top 20 business podcasts of 2015, we didn't see that coming, Charmaine, but it is a reflection of, yes, the quality of the content and the show from and how we deliver it, but it's also a reflection of where podcasting is already positioned and is moving forward. It is mainstream. It's already here. it's being covered by the local press and the national press. So if it's part of your business plan, then do it and do it right.
Beautiful. And you heard Joel saying a podcast is only going up. Joel, where can people find you? And also for all of you that are with us, make sure, and I will email out the link with the recording, make sure you sign up for the 7 Mistakes. What website can people find you at, Joel?
Sure. Best place to go is relaunchshow.com. That's where we park all of our shows and all of our free resources and information. And if you are walking around with your iPhone right now, you can pull that phone out of your pocket and you can actually enter into the Safari browser relaunchshow.com/ITC. And what that will do is, like magic, it will open up the Relaunch Show right there in your natively installed podcast app on your iPhone, which is where you can then subscribe, rate, and review. And I look forward to speaking with you soon.
Awesome. Joel, thank you so much for being here. For all of you who came to join us today, thank you, thank you, thank you, and we will see you in San Diego. Thanks a bunch, Joel. I can't wait for our next podcast together.
Me neither, Charmaine. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.